Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse. And between Harry Styles, Shawn Mendes, and 5 Seconds of Summer, it's the Battle of Swooning, cause it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So this week wound up busier than I expected. Yeah, we got that big new number one, thank God. Although projections have it getting replaced again next week, so it looks like the charts are finally getting into proper gear, and that means more activity in general. So what I might have projected as a bit of a slower week might have more new arrivals than I was expecting. Whether or not they'll be enough to break the cruft of mediocrity around the Hot 100 and actually stick around, that's a different question, but I do have some hope. Maybe? But the big change, it happened in our top 10, where debuting at number 1, the first time any song has done this in 2022, it's As It Was by Harry Styles. And let's make this clear, the top of the Hot 100 is relatively weak right now, so it doesn't really surprise me, but it is still impressive. Enormous streaming in a breakthrough backed up by a solid radio push and great sales. The rollout for this was actually sensibly done across the board, and thus it'll be kind of funny if Jack Harlow sweeps in next week as a serious challenger with all his streaming, but hey, I'm not about to complain about the new action. Now the better news is that it pushed back Heat Waves by Glass Animals to number 2, which is still strong on streaming and just rules the radio, but you can also tell that they're pushing it out the door, and that means it could be vulnerable to Big Energy by Lotto with Mariah Carey and DJ Khaled at number 3, which is dominant on sales and has a considerable radio push and streaming, but not really enough in any margin to do anything besides hold up. Hell, that's what happened as Stay by the Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber fell past it to number 4, which is sinking quickly on the radio and streaming right now. And that opens up the door for Enemy by Imagine Dragons and JID at number 5, which still has radio traction but lags there and ever so slightly on streaming. Now this shoves back Super Gremlin by Kodak Black to number 6, this is where only having streaming will hold you back, as well as Ghost by Justin Bieber at number 7, which looks like it's hit a radio peak and it's getting rotated out, which is not the case with Woman by Doja Cat at number 8, where its radio growth is slowing, but it's more than making up the margins. More than what I can say about ABCDEFU by Gale at number 9, which is just fading out naturally. Probably will also be the case for That's What I Want by Lil Nas X at number 10 going forward, as it looks like it's finally hit its radio peak. It's probably gone soon. Now that takes us to our losers and dropouts, and honestly, a lot of it has just been the newer entries that don't catch any traction. The only real notable dropouts being High by the Chainsmokers, Beautiful Lies by YoungBoy and Kalani, and Half of My Hometown by Kelsey Ballerini and Kenny Chesney. It just never got the extended push it really needed. What a shame. And when we go to our losers, well, outside of the Encanto losses for Surface Pressure by Jessica Darrow at 51, Dos Orguitas by Sebastian Yatra at 76, and What Else Can I Do by Diane Guerrero and Stephanie Beatrice at 90, the rest are just a bunch of songs that aren't catching on. What Happened to Virgil by Lil Durk and Gunna, it's not much of a second hit at 41. No Love by Summer Walker and SZA slid down to 56 off the remix. Soy El Unico by Yathrisa Su and Cicia, it fell off the debut to 57, as did Makeup Sex by Machine Gun Kelly and Black Bear to 80. Nobody Like You by Four Town from Turning Red hit 59, and To Be Loved by You by Parker McCollum is skidding late to 75. Now the good news is that there's not a lot of crap that's sticking around here either, like Thinking With My Dick by Kevin Gates and Juicy J at 67, or Handsomer by Russ and Caitlin at 73, or that god-awful Tom's Diner cover at 92. Hey, we might get a little bit lucky here. I'm gonna take it. Well, I say that, but then I take a look at some of our gains and returns, and I wonder. Yes, Get Into It, Yuh by Doja Cat. It's finally getting pushed properly back at 94. But I also saw returns for I Hate YoungBoy by YoungBoy Never Broke Again at 84, and City of Gods by Fivio Foreign, Kanye West, and Alicia Keys at 97. Although I expect that one to get a sizable jump from the album in the next week or so. And then when we look at our gains, well, the majority of it's country, and not good country at that. Slow Down Summer by Thomas Rhett at 43, Trouble with a Heartbreak by Jason Aldean at 72, Come Back as a Country Boy by Blake Shelton at 81, and She Likes It by Russell Dickerson and Jake Scott at 86. You know, things might be pretty dire when the best of our gains? Nail Tech by Jack Harlow at 58, and even then, Not saying much. But of course, that also means we got a solid 10 new arrivals to plug up the gaps here, so let's quickly get things started with number 99, Desesperados by Rauw, Alejandro, and Chencho, Corleone. Desesperado, por eso no tuvimos que parquear. So this is one of those tracks that's been a global hit for around 4 months and only now is crossing over to the US, where it did have me kind of curious where it might fall, given that Rauw Alejandro has showcased a little bit more of a willingness to experiment with his sound, even within reggaeton. Shame that it doesn't really show up here on this song. Yeah, the fizzy percussion has a little bit more gentle bounce and groove off some of the rubbery bass, but the watery melody is barely audible, and it's hard to escape the feeling that this is just another stock reggaeton cut where the vocals feel a lot overly compressed, and the two guys, they really don't have much in the way of chemistry as they croon about being so horny that they can't even get to the hotel to screw that they booked. And really, Chencho Corleone's squawk, it's right on the borderline of being really obnoxious for me. Honestly, if you were hoping for another Toto de T, I'm not sure this is going to live up to any sort of expectations, but as someone who wasn't really expecting all that much here from either of these guys, I mean, it's not bad, it's not memorable either. That might be the real problem. Number 98, Blood All On It by Gucci Mane featuring Key Glock and Young Dolph.
Bad bitch with me on it. Nigga wanna beat me down it. But the money got blood all on it. Yeah, the money got blood all on it. Hey!
Alright, am I the only one who's bothered by the fact that this feels more like a leftover Young Dolph song than anything Gucci Mane himself put together? Especially as Young Dolph has the hook and the lead-off verse. I mean, seriously, we're still doing this, especially for a song where the hook sentiment is that there's blood all over the money. Can anyone think that doesn't ring in good taste? I mean, it's not helped by some aggressively tinny synths where the higher frequencies pierce through behind the arranged sample and the piano touches before the trap percussion picks up a little bit more rattling presence, or how Gucci Mane's vocal fidelity is easily the worst in the entire track. You can tell he recorded it in a different studio, or how none of the content rises to much beyond bargain barrel flexing, where Key Glock mentions codeine in his urine, and how the girl Young Dolph was fucking caught the flu because he on so much ice. Honestly, the reason it's getting any traction at all, it's the video and any sort of name recognition. And even then, it feels painfully generic at best. Honestly, it's kind of bad. So let's move on. Number 96, 4KT Baby by YoungBoy, Never Broke Again.
We be sipping shit, no I be at wall. This is we just sell like 32, they cut though.
Okay, so apparently the deal with this is that it's from the last album YoungBoy has with Atlantic, which he's prepping to drop this year, and it could not come fast enough. Not because it's going to make his music better without any sort of label interference, but likely without a bunch of budget and connections, it's going to mean the road to getting songs to chart on the Hot 100 would get a lot steeper, and I could ignore most of it. And honestly, if this is what we're getting, with the weedy synths, YoungBoy barely staying on flow as his voice gets increasingly hoarse as he relishes the thoughts of shooting people and playing the bad guy, not sure I'm gonna miss much. Yeah, the bass line's actually pretty well developed, but given how much material YoungBoy has pushed in this lane, especially recently, it's not enough. I don't see myself caring about this. Let's move on. Number 91, Complete Mess by 5 Seconds of Summer.
You make me complete. You make me complete.
I'll admit I'm a little bit surprised to see a new 5 Seconds of Summer song on the Hot 100. Their 2020 album didn't exactly make a lot of headway. Ashton Irwin actually made a pretty fascinating grunge solo project that same year that I actually mostly liked, and I was just assuming they might be on their way out. But hey, given that they were trying for pop punk when it was long out of fashion in the mid-2010s, maybe they lasted just long enough to catch that wave again? But that's not what this is. Hell, if anything, it reminds me, in the melody especially, of some of those elegantly sweeping late 90s rock timbres, a little bit on the Britpop side with slight electronic augmentation, especially as the guitars open up after the second hook for something that I wouldn't really call a shredding solo, but it's not a bad idea. It's certainly better than that fake snap across the first verse. Hell, for as well as their frontman Michael Clifford produces this song to have some real space and bombast, I was actually quite surprised how well they replicated the swell of that era, even if I think it's missing that next gear to truly go over the top. I also think the lyrics might be a bit underwhelming here as well. The benefit of rock of that era, that it often leaned just abstract enough in order to justify apply the gravitas, which is what you can tell they're trying to do with how they lean on imagery of colors and heaven and hell, but the relatively basic hook and love-struck sentiment feels a little bit thin. Again, this is a band that's really looking for that next gear to put this over the top. But hey, it's a tone of 90s nostalgia I do miss, especially given how well 5 Seconds of Summer are willing to lean on a more robust vocal arrangement, and yeah, you know what? This is pretty damn good. I'm gonna take it. Number 88, Take My Name by Parmalee.
I'm through waiting, taking my time. Never felt like this before. Take my name and make it yours.
This is the sort of song that gets made when a band is utterly out of ideas, but just saw a smidge of success with Just the Way, so they're choosing to lean into it. I mean, on some level it's essentially harmless, but it feels so sterile that any attempt at romance feels utterly plastic, in between the fake hand claps and the drum machines, to the beyond basic melody, to how the writing feels like a first draft at best. Now, I'm not against bands making a sentimental proposal song, especially in pop country, although centering it so much around the conceit of this girl taking his name, that's iffy. But you want to include a couple details or some flavor to give the love song character, where the most we get here is how they reflect how anybody might think that this frontman's the last guy to talk like this. And I don't buy that for a second. You're a band that's beyond generic and has been out of ideas for damn near a decade. Of course you're going to sound like this. Now, I don't think it's quite as humiliating as Just the Way, even if I'm fairly certain this is reusing so many of the same basic chords, but it doesn't make this good. And if Nashville radio doesn't find something better to replace it, we might be stuck with it, and I can see this really turning on me in record time. Honestly, it's just kind of bad. Thankfully, we got another option with number 82, Damn Straight by Scotty McCreery.
But now every time that one comes on, my heart gets broken half. But do I wish I could get her back? Damn straight.
So I didn't review Scotty McCreery's album from last year, mostly because it had 2 songs I considered legit great, and the rest felt like a lot of boyfriend country filler, which I expected would be the stuff that they would push to radio. Thankfully, I was very wrong, because this is the best song from the album, and now it's getting a proper push, and yeah, it's excellent. I'm normally pretty harsh on songs that lean heavily on references to other songs, and let's be real, this track is pulling on a lot of the same formula that Scotty McCreery worked on his best song, Feel Good Summer Song, struggling with the emotional power of certain country music that only serves to remind him of the girl who left him behind. But you know what? It's a really good formula, and this doesn't just recycle that sound, especially leaning into the warm, pedal steel saturated neo-traditional tones that George Strait made his own for decades. I think the major difference, outside of the piano accents and the excellent vocal arrangement for McCreery, especially in the backing vocals, it probably comes in the writing, not just in many of the clever ways that McCreery folds in the song titles from George Strait, but also how much it genuinely hurts to see an artist you dearly love and can quote back to front become associated with real loss and heartbreak, especially when you're very much not over it. Compared to like when Old Dominion put out Song for Another Time, that kind of felt like a gimmick. It's hollow in comparison with this. There's actually an emotional core that McCreery delivers. So yeah, it's legit terrific. And while I'm not sure I put it among any of the best of any given year, I am thrilled that McCreery made a bold choice to actually push it. Let's make this a hit. Great song. Number 71, Stick by J.I.D. and J. Cole, featuring Kenny Mason and Sheck West.
Stick, stick, I got a no stick, bitch. I got a no stick, bitch. I got a no stick, boom. I got a no stick, boom.
So, Dreamville as a label put out a Gangsta Grillz mixtape with DJ drama and everything. After a listen or two, I think it's decent. I'm still on the fence whether or not I might cover it and On the Pulse. But I will say, I'm a little bit surprised it haven't received more traction this week outside of the one song, which gives me the impression that they're throwing as much muscle behind pushing JID as they possibly can. I'm not about to complain about that, so for the song in question, okay, I gotta be honest. I immediately started laughing when I missed all the arranged bombast of the instrumental and the gritty trap percussion and the slapdash mixing you'd expect from a Gangsta Grillz mixtape. Kenny Mason is hollering about how he got a brand new stick. I mean, not saying he can't sell it, he absolutely can, but it's teetering on the line of abject silliness where you can imagine pairing that hook with TikToks of giving puppies some tree branches or twigs. Not gonna lie, I checked TikTok, and there were far less of those videos than I was hoping. Less workout montages, more puppies with sticks. It would work, it'd be funny. I mean, it's not also helped by JID starting his verse with the line, "hand on my dick and hand on my gun." Honestly, I don't think his verse is all that impressive. It's not a good sign when Sheck West sounds like he's trying harder, but then J. Cole ends the track and mostly steals the entire show. A lot with the basketball references that guarantee this is going to wind up in a playoff playlist, but then he actually ramps up his intensity to finish off the song, and even if ultimately it is still all about the gunplay, there is more intensity and character there. So yeah, I'm a bit surprised that I enjoyed this as much as I did, but it's solid for what it is. Yeah, good song. I'll take it. Number 38, When You're Gone by Shawn Mendes.
I didn't know that loving you was the happiest I've ever been, so I'm just trying to hold on.
You know, after Wonder and the subsequent breakup with Camila Cabello, who was the central figure behind the majority of that album, I had a lot of open questions where the hell Shawn Mendes might take his career, especially as Wonder was pretty awful and by many metrics outside of Canada, an absolute bomb. But hey, the buzz with this song was actually pretty high. And you know what? Wow, it was actually mostly worth it. Because for a well-balanced, slick pop song that screams not over her, Shawn Mendes delivered. Now, I'm on the fence whether or not it's great. The acoustics and the vocal pickup feel a little bit over-compressed alongside some of the gauzy layers on the hook, and Shawn Mendes is not exactly a strong presence that can really sell this effectively for me. Give it to Niall Horan, I think I'd be a lot more impressed. But the groove is a lot more defined, and the majority of Shawn Mendes' material gives him some low-end foundation, and even if the writing might feel pretty basic, it effectively gets across the ideas underneath it just fine. And considering this is probably one of the sharpest hooks that Shawn Mendes has had in a while, yeah, good song. Not great, but I'll take it. Number 33, In My Head by Lil Tjay.
If you ain't quick, I can't say that it's love, but I know that I want some more of it. These feelings been stuck on my head, ain't too big on level with you, I'm all for it. See the world, me and you, we get torrid. Fuck all them better things, you then ignore it.
You know you might be getting old or been doing this too long when the first thing you note about a Lil Tjay drill song is how they sampled Ayaz's Replay, a song that I'm fairly certain everybody has mostly forgotten unless you're a pop nerd like me. Now, I never disliked that song that much, but it feels like nobody understood the greatest strength of that sample came in how catchy the vocal melody is. So suffocating it behind the shuffling drill skitter, some very bare bones acoustics, and Lil Tjay flowing off rhythm from the sample leaves the track feeling really off balance and not in the good way that you would expect with drill. Now, the one thing I'll give Lil Tjay is that he kind of gets the song should be playing for the more sentimental side, which is a very different lane than the player side, but there's no sweetness here in the melody or presentation to play into it. It's trying to go for a far darker angst, and with that sample, it just feels off. Now, granted, I don't think this is precisely bad so much as a failed experiment, but if it tanks on the charts, I would not be surprised. Just saying. And finally, number 1, As It Was by Harry Styles.
You know it's not the same as it was.
And now, the big new single from Harry Styles, the one we've all been waiting for since Fine Line had a shockingly strong singles run, even as I consider that album a tedious step down from the debut. And I'm not sure about this. Let me start by saying that the springy synth tune playing off the sharper drums, it does give the track some 80s retro flavor. Reminds me a solid bit of the indie rock band Lower Dens, especially with those synth tones and this higher tempo. And while the bells on the outro coming in are a nice touch, outside of that synth line, there's just not much in the way of a hook that really takes advantage of all that tempo. And it's not like Harry Styles is giving it that much of a striking performance, especially on the chorus. Now, the idea behind the lyrics, it's actually pretty cool. The world is passing him by, where there's this figure still in his life that cares about him, but he knows that it doesn't feel the same and he'll have to let go, let that person move on. Where the drama comes in between that dull-eyed pragmatism and any sense of romance or a broader gesture. But for me, I've never been all that fond of songs that indulge in this sort of stasis as their climax point, where it might be more realistic, but kind of misses a major opportunity to ramp up the emotion. I don't know, for a while while now, I've had the feeling that Harry Styles is trying to write himself as being weirder than he actually is, and this song's a prime example of it. I mean, it's certainly catchy, it's well composed, but it's not really clicking for me in terms of style or substance. It's not bad by any means, but I'm not sure it's great either. It might grow on me. Kind of hope it does. But that being said, it was a pretty damn solid week, and I got some real choices here. Now for the worst, okay, That's Going to Take My Name by Parmalee, with dishonorable mention to Blood All On It by Gucci Mane, Key Glock, and the late young Dolph. It just feels in really poor taste there. But best of the week, well, okay, Damn Straight by Scotty McCreery is locking that up. But I'm actually going to go for a tie with honorable mention, with Complete Mess by 5 Seconds of Summer, alongside Stick by J.I.D., J. Cole, Kenny Mason, and Sheck West. Yeah, I think I might be as surprised about that as anybody. Now, next week, well, big song from Jack Harlow competing for the top, plus whatever 504 and Coil Ray might do, so stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.